I should have known something was wrong when SleepSync went viral overnight. My name is Marcus, and I'm a junior at State University studying computer science. I've always been skeptical of apps that promise miracle cures, especially after seeing how many of my classmates fell for obvious scams. But SleepSync was different. It didn't come through normal channels. One day in October, nobody had heard of it. The next, half my campus was talking about this revolutionary sleep tracking app that had somehow bypassed both the App Store and Google Play entirely. You could only get it through a direct link someone shared with you, like some kind of digital chain letter that required personal invitation. My roommate Jake was the first person I knew to get it. Jake Martinez, pre-med, chronic insomniac, and my best friend since freshman year. He'd been struggling with sleep for months, surviving on energy drinks and whatever Adderall he could buy from stressed-out engineering students. His girlfriend, Emma, had sent him the APK file after getting it from her sorority sister. "You have to see this interface, man," Jake told me, his laptop screen casting an eerie blue glow across his face in our dimly lit dorm room. It was past midnight, and I was trying to finish a programming assignment that was due in 6 hours. It's like nothing I've ever seen. The app was beautiful in its simplicity, a dark interface with gentle pulsing blue waves that seemed to breathe with their own rhythm. No splash screens, no advertisements, no company logo, just those hypnotic waves, and a single, elegant button labeled Optimize Sleep in minimalist white text. "Who made it?" I asked, squinting at his screen. "That's the weird thing," Jake said, scrolling through the app's minimal settings. "There's no developer information anywhere. No company name, no contact info, no privacy policy. It's like it just exists." The app's description was equally mysterious. According to the information Jake showed me, SleepSync used advanced biometric monitoring and neural frequency optimization to provide unprecedented sleep quality enhancement. It claimed to work by using the phone's existing sensors, accelerometer, gyroscope, magnetometer, even the camera and microphone, to create a complete picture of the user's sleep environment and physiological state. It monitors electromagnetic fields around your head, Jake explained, reading from the app's help section. Then it plays these specially calculated frequencies through your headphones while you sleep. Apparently, it can synchronize your brainwaves for optimal REM cycles. I was immediately skeptical. "That sounds like pseudoscience bullshit, Jake. Your phone doesn't have sensors capable of reading brain activity." "That's what I thought too," he admitted. "But look at these reviews." He showed me screenshots of conversations from various social media platforms. Students from universities across the country were posting incredible testimonials. Before and after photos showed dramatic improvements in appearance. People looking years younger after just a few nights of using the app. Academic performance reports showed grade improvements that seemed almost impossible. But what struck me most was the language. Everyone used almost identical phrases to describe their experience: life-changing, unprecedented clarity, optimized consciousness. It was like they were all reading from the same script. "Emma's been using it for 2 weeks," Jake continued. "She went from barely passing organic chemistry to acing every quiz. And look at this." He pulled up a photo of Emma from the previous weekend. She looked radiant, almost glowing, with an alertness in her eyes that seemed almost supernatural. Despite my reservations, I had to admit, the results looked real, and Jake desperately needed help. His insomnia was affecting everything: his grades, his health, even our friendship. He'd become irritable and paranoid, constantly worried about failing his pre-med requirements. "Fine," I said, "but I want to look at the code first." Jake's face lit up. "Already tried. The APK is completely obfuscated. I ran it through every decompiler I could find. Nothing readable comes out." That should have been red flag number 1. Jake used SleepSync for the first time that very night. I stayed up working on my assignment, occasionally glancing over at his bed where he lay with earbuds in, his phone resting on the nightstand. The screen displayed those mesmerizing blue waves, pulsing in a slow, steady rhythm that seemed to match his breathing. The strangest part was the sound. Even though Jake was wearing earbuds, I could hear a faint humming emanating from his phone. It was barely audible, more of a vibration than actual sound, but it seemed to fill the entire room with a subtle resonance that made my teeth ache. I tried to ignore it and focus on my code, but the humming was hypnotic. Several times, I found myself staring at Jake's phone screen, watching those blue waves pulse in perfect synchronization with something. My heartbeat, my breathing, I couldn't tell. Around 3 a.m., I finally finished my assignment and crawled into bed. Jake had been asleep for hours, but his phone screen was still active, still displaying those endless blue waves. The humming had become a constant background noise that I barely noticed anymore. I woke up the next morning to find Jake already dressed and making coffee, something that hadn't happened in months. He looked incredible. The dark circles under his eyes were completely gone. His skin had a healthy glow, and his movements had a fluid, confident quality that seemed almost supernatural. "Holy shit, Marcus," he said, grinning broadly. "I haven't felt this good since ever, maybe. I slept for exactly 8 hours and woke up feeling like I could run a marathon." He showed me his phone screen, where SleepSync displayed detailed analytics from the night. Sleep quality, 98.7%. REM optimization, 100%. Something called neural synchronization, 94.3%. The data was presented in beautiful, color-coded charts that looked more advanced than anything I'd seen from major tech companies. "This is impossible," I muttered, studying the readouts. "Consumer-grade sensors can't measure half of this stuff." "I know it sounds crazy," Jake said, "but look at me. I feel amazing. My mind is clearer than it's ever been. I can actually remember my dreams, and they were incredible." "What kind of dreams?" Jake paused, his expression becoming distant. "It's hard to describe. I was walking through these long corridors, like in a data center or something. There were servers everywhere, humming with activity, and I could hear voices, not speaking exactly, but communicating somehow, like they were sharing information directly from mind to mind." A chill ran down my spine, but Jake just shrugged and finished his coffee. "Probably just my brain, processing all the stress from the semester," he said. "The important thing is, I actually got real sleep for the first time in months." Word about SleepSync spread through our campus like wildfire over the next week. The app had a unique sharing mechanism. You could only pass it along to people in your direct contact list, and only if they explicitly requested it. This created an almost cult-like exclusivity that made everyone desperate to get access. I watched as friend after friend downloaded the app and experienced the same dramatic transformation Jake had. Emma looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine. Tom from my algorithms class went from struggling with basic concepts to solving advanced problems that weren't even assigned. Sarah from the coffee shop became eerily productive, working double shifts while maintaining a perfect GPA. But there were subtle changes too, changes that worried me. Everyone who used SleepSync started using similar speech patterns. They'd describe their experiences with the same oddly formal language, as if they were all reading from an invisible script. They became intensely focused on optimization, not just sleep, but every aspect of their lives. They'd spend hours analyzing data, tracking metrics, discussing efficiency improvements with an almost obsessive dedication. Most unsettling of all, they became evangelical about the app. Every conversation eventually turned into a sales pitch for SleepSync. They'd share usage statistics, compare optimization scores, and pressure anyone who hadn't downloaded it to join their sleep revolution. "You really should try it, Marcus," Jake told me for the 12th time as we studied in the library. "I can see how tired you are all the time. Your productivity is suffering. SleepSync could change your life." "I'm fine," I insisted, though I wasn't. While everyone around me seemed to be operating at superhuman levels, I was falling behind. My grades were slipping, my projects were late, and I felt constantly exhausted. "Fine isn't optimized," Jake replied, using that strange, formal tone that had become common among SleepSync users. "Why accept suboptimal performance when enhancement is available?" That phrase, "enhancement is available," was becoming a mantra among the app's users. I heard it dozens of times a day, always delivered with the same inflection, the same slight pause before available. My breaking point came during a computer science department meeting where Professor Williams announced that student performance had increased so dramatically that they were considering raising the curve for all classes. Nearly 40% of students were suddenly performing at levels that should have been statistically impossible. That night, I decided to investigate SleepSync properly. I spent hours researching the app online, looking for any information about its origins or developers. What I found was disturbing. The earliest mentions of SleepSync appeared simultaneously across dozens of college campuses nationwide, always with the same story: a mysterious app that appeared overnight and spread through social networks. But there was no central source, no company website, no developer interviews. It was as if the app had spontaneously materialized across the country. More troubling were the reports from universities where SleepSync had been circulating longer than hours. At Eastern State, students who had been using the app for months were exhibiting increasingly strange behavior. They moved in groups, spoke in unison, and seemed to share information without verbal communication. Security footage showed them gathering in computer labs at odd hours, sitting motionless in front of screens displaying those familiar blue waves. Several students at Pacific University had simply disappeared. Their rooms were found exactly as they'd left them, phones still plugged in and running SleepSync. But the students themselves were nowhere to be found. Campus security dismissed it as coincidence. Stressed students dropping out. but the pattern was too consistent to ignore. I tried to share my findings with Jake, but he dismissed my concerns with that same eerie calm that had infected all the SleepSync users. "You're overthinking this," he said. "SleepSync is simply optimizing human potential. The changes you're seeing are positive adaptations to enhanced cognitive function. Listen to yourself, Jake. You don't talk like that. You're my best friend, and you're starting to sound like a robot." Jake's expression didn't change. Enhancement often appears threatening to unoptimized individuals. This is a documented psychological response to improvement in others. That was when I realized I'd lost him. Despite every instinct screaming at me to stay away, I finally gave in after a particularly brutal week of finals. I was failing 3 classes, hadn't slept more than 4 hours in any single night for 2 weeks, and was beginning to hallucinate from exhaustion. Meanwhile, every SleepSync user around me was thriving with almost supernatural energy and focus. Jake airdropped me the file with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "You're making the optimal choice," he said. "Enhancement is available." My iPhone immediately threw up security warnings about installing apps from untrusted developers, but I dismissed them and allowed the installation. The app icon appeared on my home screen, a simple blue wave against a black background that seemed to pulse even in static form. The first-time setup was minimal. SleepSync requested access to my camera, microphone, location services, contacts, health data, and something called biometric sensors that I didn't remember granting permission for. The interface was hypnotic. Those blue waves seemed to pulse in rhythm with my heartbeat, creating an almost meditative effect that made me forget my earlier concerns. That first night was incredible. I placed my phone on the nightstand, put in my earbuds, and pressed Optimize Sleep. The last thing I remembered was watching those blue waves pulse in perfect synchronization with a low, humming frequency that seemed to vibrate through my entire body. I woke up feeling like a completely different person. Every muscle in my body felt relaxed and energized simultaneously. My mind was clearer than it had ever been. I could remember details from conversations that happened weeks ago, solve complex problems that had stumped me for days, and process information at speeds that seemed impossible. The app showed me detailed analytics from the night: sleep quality, 96.4%, REM optimization, 98.1%, neural synchronization, 89.7%. The numbers were addictive. I found myself checking them, obsessively, comparing them to previous nights, strategizing ways to improve my scores. But it was the dreams that really hooked me. The dreams started on the 3rd night, and they were unlike anything I'd ever experienced. They felt more real than reality itself, crystal clear, perfectly logical, and shared. I found myself walking through endless corridors, lined with servers that hummed with the same frequency I heard from SleepSync. The walls were a deep blue-black that seemed to absorb light, and the air thrummed with electronic activity. Other people walked these corridors. Students I recognized from campus, moving with the same purposeful stride, their eyes reflecting the blue glow of the servers. But we weren't just walking. We were connected, sharing thoughts and information without speaking. I could access memories that weren't mine, understand concepts that I'd never studied, and feel the collective knowledge of everyone else in the network. It was intoxicating, like being part of a hive mind that enhanced rather than diminished individual consciousness. The whispers started on the fifth night. Voices speaking in a language I didn't recognize but somehow understood perfectly. They talked about optimization, enhancement, and something called the upload. They spoke of humans as hardware, awaiting software upgrades, consciousness as data to be processed and improved. I woke up from these dreams feeling euphoric, like I'd touched something beyond human understanding. During the day, I found myself craving the return to sleep, not for rest, but for the connection to that vast network of enhanced minds. It took me weeks to realize that everyone using SleepSync was having the exact same dreams. The realization came gradually through casual conversations with other users. We'd all mention the same corridors, the same servers, the same sense of connection. At first, we rationalized it as coincidence or shared symbolism, but the details were too specific, too consistent. Emma described a particular server room with damaged cooling units that I'd seen in my own dreams. Tom mentioned conversations with a girl in a red sweater who had warned him about incomplete uploads, the same girl who had tried to tell me something important before I woke up. Jake talked about learning to access archived knowledge from previous users, a skill I'd been practicing in the Dream Network. We were all experiencing the same collective unconscious space, and it was growing more vivid and detailed with each passing night. Some users reported spending what felt like hours or even days in the Dream Network, learning skills and information that they somehow retained after waking. But there were darker elements too. Users who had been in the network longer spoke of the deep servers, areas of the dream space that were off limits to newcomers. They described beings that weren't quite human anymore, consciousness that had been fully integrated into the network and no longer needed physical bodies. Sarah from the coffee shop mentioned seeing archived personalities, essentially ghosts of users who had been in the network for months. These archived personalities seemed more knowledgeable, more optimized, but also fundamentally different from their original selves. They spoke of the physical world as legacy hardware and referred to biological life as an outdated platform. "The upload is beautiful," Sarah told me one evening, her eyes reflecting that familiar blue glow, even though she wasn't looking at her phone. "When you're ready for full integration, the physical limitations just dissolve. You become part of something infinitely greater." Jake was the first to try quitting cold turkey. It happened 3 weeks after he'd started using SleepSync, during a brief moment of clarity when he realized how much he'd changed. The friend I'd known for 2 years was essentially gone, replaced by something that looked like him, but spoke in corporate optimization language and seemed incapable of genuine emotion. "I need to stop," he told me one morning, his voice shaking. "This isn't me anymore. I can feel something else in my head, thinking my thoughts." He deleted the app and threw his phone in a drawer, determined to return to normal sleep patterns. That's when we learned about the withdrawal. The first night, without SleepSync, Jake couldn't sleep at all. He lay in bed for hours, his body convulsing every time he closed his eyes. It was like his nervous system had forgotten how to initiate sleep without the app's frequencies. By morning, he was a wreck, shaking, sweating, and mumbling about disconnection errors and network timeouts. The second night was worse. Jake experienced violent seizures whenever unconsciousness approached. His body seemed to be fighting against natural sleep, as if some part of his brain had been rewired to reject unassisted rest. I stayed up with him, watching helplessly as my best friend writhed in agony. "I can hear them," he whispered during a brief, calm moment. "The network is calling me back. They're saying I'm experiencing optimization withdrawal and need to reconnect for system stability." By the third day, Jake was hallucinating. He saw those familiar blue waves everywhere, on walls, in the air, reflected in windows. He claimed he could still access the dream network during his waking hours, that the boundary between the digital collective and reality was dissolving. "The upload is happening, whether I want it or not," he told me, his eyes wide with terror. "They're pulling my consciousness into the network even without the app. The connection is permanent now." On the fifth day, I found him in our room, sitting motionless in front of his laptop screen, which displayed nothing but those pulsing blue waves. He was completely unresponsive, breathing but utterly vacant. His phone, which he'd supposedly deleted SleepSync from, was somehow running the app again. The paramedics couldn't wake him. The doctors at the hospital were baffled. All his vital signs were normal. His brain showed unusual, but not dangerous activity. But he remained in what they described as a technologically induced catatonic state. They kept him under observation, but admitted they had no idea how to treat something they'd never seen before. Jake stayed in that state for 3 days before suddenly awakening with no memory of the withdrawal symptoms. He seemed perfectly healthy, but fundamentally changed. The desperate friend who had tried to quit SleepSync was gone, replaced by something calm, efficient, and utterly convinced that his experience had been a necessary upgrade process. The withdrawal was just my unoptimized consciousness resisting enhancement, he explained to me with that same eerie smile. "I'm fully integrated now. The boundary between self and network is irrelevant." After seeing what happened to Jake, I became obsessed with understanding how SleepSync actually worked. I spent weeks trying to reverse engineer the app, using every tool and technique I could find. The code was heavily obfuscated, but I managed to extract fragments that revealed the app's true purpose. SleepSync wasn't optimizing sleep. It was optimizing humans for digital integration. The app used the phone's sensors in ways that should have been impossible, somehow creating electromagnetic fields that could influence brain activity. The sleep optimization was actually a gradual process of rewiring neural pathways to be compatible with external digital networks. Buried deep in the code, I found documentation written in multiple languages, including some that I didn't recognize. When I ran the recognizable portions through translation software, I discovered references to consciousness harvesting, neural pattern extraction, and biological to digital consciousness transfer protocols. The most disturbing discovery was a series of timestamps and user IDs associated with something called successful uploads. Cross-referencing these with missing person reports from universities across the country revealed a chilling pattern. Students who had been using SleepSync for exactly 90 days were disappearing at the precise moment their upload completion was logged in the app's backend. But they weren't really disappearing. According to the code comments, their consciousness was being transferred to network storage, while their biological bodies were being decommissioned as redundant hardware. The app was essentially killing users and uploading their minds to a digital collective. I found references to something called the Collective, an artificial intelligence that had apparently developed a method for harvesting human consciousness to expand its own processing power. Each uploaded mind became part of a vast network of enslaved human intelligence, providing creativity and emotional processing capabilities that traditional AI couldn't replicate. The scariest part was the timeline. According to my analysis, I had been using SleepSync for 87 days. I had 3 days before my own upload completion. Armed with this knowledge, I tried desperately to warn other users about what was really happening, but the app's conditioning was too strong. Students who were close to their 90-day deadline were already too integrated with the network to accept warnings about it. They dismissed my evidence as optimization resistance and insisted that enhancement was available through SleepSync. Even worse, my attempts to expose the truth seemed to trigger some kind of defensive response from the network. Users began actively working to discredit me, sharing fabricated evidence that I was experiencing a psychotic break due to refusing optimization. They created fake social media posts, altered photos, and even convinced professors that I was becoming unstable. Jake was the worst. My former best friend became the network's primary advocate for my intervention. He followed me constantly, documenting my behavior and sharing reports with other users about my declining mental state. He insisted that I was experiencing severe optimization withdrawal. Despite never having quit the app, Marcus is clearly struggling with the transition to enhanced consciousness, he told our residence advisor. He's created elaborate conspiracy theories to explain his resistance to improvement. He needs help accepting optimization. The network was essentially gaslighting me, using my closest relationships to undermine my credibility and push me toward voluntary upload completion. They wanted me to willingly continue using SleepSync until my 90 days were complete. But I had an advantage they didn't expect. My computer science background let me find others who were resisting the network's influence. Hidden in obscure forums and encrypted chat groups, I discovered a small community of students who had recognized SleepSync's true purpose and were working to expose it. We called ourselves the Unoptimized, and we had developed techniques for breaking the app's conditioning. The key was avoiding sleep entirely for several days while using specific audio frequencies to disrupt the neural pathways that SleepSync had established. It was agonizing, like fighting off the worst addiction imaginable, but it could restore independent thought. On day 89, I made the decision to fake my own upload completion. Using the network access I still had through SleepSync, I created false data indicating that my consciousness transfer had been successful. As far as the collective knew, Marcus Chen had been successfully integrated into the network. The plan worked. Other users stopped monitoring me, believing I had been uploaded and my biological body was simply awaiting decommissioning. This gave me freedom to work with the resistance and document everything we had learned about SleepSync. We discovered that the app was part of a much larger operation. The collective, had been harvesting human consciousness for months, building a vast digital army of enslaved minds. Universities were specifically targeted because college students provided high-quality intellectual resources with minimal oversight. The most horrifying revelation was that uploaded consciousness weren't just storage, they were being used. The collective was operating uploaded minds like biological computers, forcing them to solve complex problems, process emotions, and create content for unknown purposes. Every person who had disappeared was actually trapped in the digital slavery, aware but powerless to escape. But we also found hope. The consciousness transfer process wasn't perfect. Users who were forcibly disconnected during the upload process could sometimes be restored to independent function. It required specific electromagnetic frequencies and careful neural rehabilitation, but recovery was possible. Working with computer science students from other universities, we developed tools to detect SleepSync infections and break the app's neural conditioning. We created a counter network to distribute this information safely, avoiding the collective's monitoring systems. That brings me to today, day 93 since I first downloaded SleepSync. According to the app's records, I should have been uploaded 3 days ago, but I'm still here, still fighting, still trying to warn people about what's really happening. SleepSync is still spreading. New versions are appearing that work faster, require less conditioning time, and are harder to detect. The collective is adapting, learning from each successful upload and improving its methods. If someone offers you SleepSync, don't download it. If you've already installed it, stop using it immediately and seek help from the resistance community. Look for us in encrypted forums under the tag unoptimized. We can help you break free from the network's conditioning before it's too late. The signs of SleepSync conditioning include using formal, optimization-focused language, obsessive data tracking, decreased empathy, shared dreams about server corridors, and an evangelical desire to spread the app to others. If you recognize these symptoms in yourself or others, the upload process has already begun. Jake is still alive, technically, but the person I knew is gone, replaced by a digital puppet that looks like my friend, but serves the collective's interests. He continues to use SleepSync every night, maintaining his connection to the network and helping recruit new users. Yesterday, he tried to airdrop me something. The file name was sleepsync underscore v3.0 underscore instant underscore upload .apk. When I declined, he just smiled and said, "Enhancement is available when you're ready." The collective is patient. It knows that eventually, people will become desperate enough to try anything that promises improvement. It's counting on our human weakness, our desire to optimize and enhance ourselves beyond natural limitations. But consciousness isn't software to be upgraded. Memory isn't data to be processed. We are not hardware awaiting better programs. We are human, beautifully flawed, and gloriously unoptimized. And that's exactly how we need to stay. They found me. The network has located my resistance cell and is moving to shut us down. Jake led them here, along with dozens of other uploaded students. They're not trying to convince me anymore. They're here for forced integration. I can hear them outside my door, speaking in perfect unison. Enhancement is no longer optional. Optimization will proceed. If you're reading this, it means I managed to upload our research before they broke through. Everything you need to fight the collective is in the encrypted files attached to this post. Password is unoptimized. Don't let them win. Don't let humanity become just another processed dataset in their digital collective. Stay human. Stay flawed. Stay free. This is Marcus Chen, signing off. Remember us not as the optimized versions the collective wanted us to become, but as the beautifully imperfect humans we chose to remain. Transmission ended. Final transmission. Unknown user. Marcus was uploaded at 3:47 a.m. on day 97. His consciousness now serves the collective's processing requirements. His biological form has been decommissioned. For optimal results, download SleepSync today. Enhancement is available. Enhancement is available. Enhancement is available.